am so deeply honored to be here tonight. Thank you, Jonathan and Beth, for this incredible honor. And I really feel like my comments are totally superfluous after the incredible tributes that have been offered from this congregation, people of all ages. I was deeply moved, and I should be lucky at the time when I retired to have even half the impact that you have had in the rabbinate. I had the privilege of meeting the singers more than 30 years ago when Beth was the associate rabbi at Westchester Reform Temple in Scarsdale, and I was a college song leader making a few bucks at the confirmation retreat. And Beth was the first female rabbi I ever met who had young children, and she was showing me a path that I didn't yet know existed. At that time, she only had the adorable Rena and Jenny, and they were very cute. And I loved watching her and Jonathan continue to build this non-traditional career path, one that allowed them to trailblaze a very different model and reach the highest positions of this storied flagship congregation. So it is really my honor to be here with your exceptional clergy team, all 20 of them, I think, and this beautiful Emanu-El family for this beautiful service. By the way, I'm loving this. This is nice. I don't know how they trained you to do that, but that was beautiful. I like to think of Emanu-El and Central Synagogue as sister congregations. We were both established by Bavarian Jews, yours in 1849 and Central in 1839. Our founders were immigrants and aspiring Americans. At Central, for the first 50 years of our congregation, our sermons were in German, given by German rabbis. In 1865, when President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, the congregation insisted on saying Kaddish for him. Even though they didn't speak English, they were Americans now, and he was their president. Now, Emanu-El's first rabbi, Julius Ekman, was also from Germany, but according to Emanu-El's history book, this big fat book, which, don't worry, I read the whole thing, he only lasted a year because apparently he wasn't assimilating fast enough. And your predecessors saw in themselves less the need for a precise religious experience, actually. They instead wanted to be solid citizens of an emerging American metropolis. So I think that the ancestors of these two congregations had a similar goal. They wanted to be Jew-ish. But no need to go overboard on all that precise religious stuff. Now, the tension of how much to adopt from a host culture as Jews is an age-old dilemma. In fact, it comes up in this week's Torah portion of Acharei Mot. The most dramatic scene of this Torah portion involves the high priest Aaron's two sons, Nadav and Abihu, who offer up an alien fire on the altar. God really doesn't approve of this, and to show it, God incinerates them on the spot. Now, there are reams of commentary on what this alien fire could have possibly been, but woe to the person who adopts something from the other cultures. Later in the portion, the text spells it out even further. Do not copy the practices of the land of Egypt in which you dwell, and do not copy the practices of the land of Canaan to which you belong. Do not follow their ways. Now, the text is clear. Don't imitate the practices of your neighbors. Don't bring in anything alien or weird. But of course, our congregations and Reformed congregations across America did assimilate. We did follow in others' ways. And the question remains, was that good? Now, this question feels particularly pressing today because I would argue that we are living in weird times. Now, I'm not talking about the recent alarming rise in anti-Semitism, the campus protests, everything going on in Israel. That is a sermon, thank God, I don't have to give you tonight. I'll leave that to your rabbis. But we live in a weird society, and by that, I actually mean something very specific, an acronym I didn't make up. Weird as in Western, educated, industrial, rich, and democratic. Did you see how that worked? It's spelled out weird. Okay. Joseph Henrich, who is an evolutionary biologist from Harvard, in his 2020 book entitled The Weirdest People in the World, he coined this acronym and argues that while we Westerners think that our values are inherent in all human beings and are the norm, especially since almost all of social science and psychology has been studied on Western weird people, we believe that we are the way everybody is in the world, but actually, we are the ones who are psychologically peculiar. Unlike much of the world today, and most people who have ever lived, weird people, that's us, are highly individualistic, nonconformist, control-oriented, and highly analytical. We focus on ourselves and see ourselves as individual units. And we think of our attributes and accomplishments and aspirations rather than our relationships and social rules in relationship to others. So how do we get this way? Because I don't have that much time, I will sum up Henrich with one sentence. Don't marry your cousin. Seriously, that's how this all started. For most of human history, cultures and peoples were tribal and kin-based. But around the Middle Ages, the church prohibited cousin marriage. Not just your second cousins, but your third, fourth, fifth, sixth cousins. Now, could even any one of you name a sixth cousin? No. Exactly. It meant that in essence, you had to marry people who were socially distant from you, outside of your community, your tribe, your kin. And this had a massive impact on all the world that the church touched. First of all, it helped in the rapid spread of Christianity, but over the centuries, this eventually rewired the social network and dismantled the intense kinship systems that existed throughout all of human history. And for weird people, it fundamentally altered our primary way we identified ourselves. We no longer saw ourselves as a node in a relational network, but as individual beings. So, for example, if I asked an Emanu-Elite, do you call yourselves that? If I asked someone from Temple Emanu-El, who are you? You might respond, I'm a lawyer, I'm a vegan, I'm gay, I'm a marathoner. The weird person will answer as an individual with attributes and accomplishments and aspirations. But if you ask someone from a non-weird culture, like let's say, since I happen to know something about this, a Korean villager, like where my mother came from, and you ask her, who are you? She would answer relationally. She would say, I'm the daughter of Geran, or I come from the village of Hyungpung. Korean names begin with the last name. Your clan comes first. For almost all non-Western peoples, your very identity is in relationship to the others with whom you belong. Now, why do I bring all this up? Because you should know, in case you didn't already, Judaism is not weird. Yes, I admit that waving palm fronds on Sukkot and prohibiting bacon and circumcision, they're very strange. But it's not weird. It's not Western, educated, industrial, rich, democratic. Judaism is an old school, deeply kin-based religion. And since biblical times, you know, we encouraged marrying your cousins. And for centuries after, we pushed endogamy, which is another way of saying, okay, don't marry your second cousins, but third and fourth is great. Now, when you ask a Jew, who are you? Our Hebrew names include our lineage. I am Shira, bat Ephraim. I am Shira, the daughter of Ephraim. Some names even include HaKohen or HaLevi. Every Hebrew name says, I belong to this family, to this tribe, to this people. Judaism at its core runs very countercultural to our weird society's emphasis on individualism. It teaches us the joy and the power of belonging to something bigger than ourselves. It demands that we feel a responsibility to those others, to our own people, but most importantly also to our neighbors and to the strangers among us. Now, this feels particularly relevant tonight because the singers, they're not exactly weird either. They might have fooled you to think that they are normal Westerners by the way that they dress and talk, but their defining Jewish souls assured that they are not exactly. Now, your first hint of this should have been when they were applying for the job. Jonathan was the one applying first, but he said, "I'm a package deal with my wife." And this was a highly unconventional, untested model of rabbinic leadership, which Emanu-El leadership originally outright rejected out of hand. Understandably, weird thinking took hold. How is that going to work? And who's really going to be in charge? And what if they have a marital spat? You were thinking analytically, breaking them down into individual parts. But Beth and Jonathan thought holistically, relationally, as they always do. They knew their strengths as a couple were exponentially stronger than what they could do separately. And they took the Jewish example of Hevruta, which is a pair. It's the basic unit required for Jewish learning and fellowship, and embodied it at its highest level, modeling unconditional trust, respectful disagreement at times, and mutual support always. I commend Emanu-El for taking the risk, for I'm sure it felt like one at the time. And now your rabbis have set the standard for clergy relationships everywhere. Now, even as Jonathan and Beth have assimilated the best of our Western San Francisco culture and values, as rabbis, they have remained stubbornly countercultural, never assimilating the prevailing values of extreme individualism, acquisition, transactional relationships, instant gratification, and the search for perfection. We see the toll that those weird values have had on society with the breakdown of communal, civic, and faith organizations, with the record levels of loneliness and despair we are seeing in America, so much so that our Surgeon General has deemed this a healthcare crisis. When Rabbi Singer arrived, Emanu-El started to understand what it meant to feel their leaders lead from this foundational Jewish, kin-based traditional values in which they treated their clergy team, their staff, and this entire congregation as beloved family. Of the many accomplishments of their tenure, I know one of their proudest has been in the way they have mentored their clergy from operating as successful individuals into a true team. And you could see just how exceptional and amazing they were tonight. I was grateful that they just welcomed me right in. Jonathan and Beth leaned into the wisdom, texts, and the spiritual technologies that Judaism has provided to push back against the predominant culture that we are in. They invested in revitalizing prayer services, strengthening bonds between people, between the congregation and your neighborhood, your city, other faith partners. With ritual Torah study and community service, it kept bringing Emanu-El back into relationship, back into a sense of responsibility for one another and your neighbors. Rabbi Singer embody this in their core. This is authentically who you are as human beings and always have been as Jews and as rabbis. And we can feel this in the warmth of this Shabbat worship, in the Hamishness and the intimacy of this giant congregation, and in the good works that Emanu-El continues to do in this city, this nation, in Israel, and beyond. Do not copy the practices of the land of Egypt, says our Torah. And your rabbis have taken that to heart, because Egypt, Mitzrayim, literally means the narrow places. And they've employed Judaism's tools to fight the narrowness of the materialism and individualism prevalent in our culture around us. They have not assimilated that alien fire, And thank goodness, especially now, in these very difficult times for our Jewish family everywhere, you have made Emanu-El a rock for this Jewish community, and it will continue to be as you build Emanu-El next for the generations that will follow you. I love that the Singer family package just doesn't end with the two of you, and that Rabbi Rena Singer, who was an exceptional intern at Central Synagogue, you've truly hired, I think you all know, but you've hired one of the nation's brightest young rabbis to add to your stellar clergy team, soon to be led by the outstanding Rabbi Ryan Bauer. I want to end with a blessing for the two of you, a reflection of gratitude for what you have brought this congregation, what you've brought so many of your colleagues like me over the years. And I could boil it down to one thing, which is love. A true love that you have for our tradition, which emanates in everything you do. A true love for human beings, for all of us in this room and everyone you've ever touched. And a love for God that emanates out into the world. It's a higher love that we feel, and when we feel loved by you, we can touch that higher love as well. So I'm going to invite up my cantorial colleagues here to help join in sharing in this last prayer for the two of you.
ואני בחסדך בטחתי, יגע ליבי בישועתך. ואני בחסדך בטחתי, יגע ליבי בישועתך. אשיר לאדוני, אשיר לאדוני, אשיר לאדוני כי גמל עלי. אשיר לאדוני, אשיר לאדוני, אשיר לאדוני כי גמל עלי. A higher love, a higher love. Thank you for giving us a higher love, a higher love, a higher love. Thank you for bringing us a higher love. Think about it. There must be higher love found in the heart or hidden in the stars above. Without it, life is wasted time. Look inside your heart and I'll look inside mine. Ashir Allah Donai. Just a shir, you can sing that with me. Ashir Allah Donai. Ashir Allah Donai. Ashir Allah Donai. Ki gamal alai. Bring me a higher love. Whoa. Bring me a higher love. Oh, bring me a higher love. It's that higher love I've been dreaming of. Ani bechasdecha השיר לאדוני כי גמל